Okay, it's time for another story time type behind the scenes business life type video, okay? The last video I did of this was really well received by you guys, so I wanted to make sure that I formed this as part of my content strategy moving forward. If you haven't seen the last video I did, I recommend watching it before you watch this one. It was basically a big life update. I spoke about burnout and I spoke about how I quit my 9-to-5 job, and that's what today's video is all about. It's about how I arrived at the decision to quit my 9-to-5 and my top tips for anyone who is considering quitting, and basically it's going to be like a bit of a framework of how you can decide whether or not it's the right time for you to quit or not. Now, I did originally decide that that lovely location that I done my last video in, which is like 1 meter that way, was going to be my new location for these types of videos, but it's actually too sunny to film that video over there today, which is a weird thing. It's rare that, you know, it's ever too sunny in London. That doesn't happen often, but it happened today. So I'm back in my original spot with my good mate Bob Marley. Things could be much worse, you know, but I do have a drink. I also decided that these videos will come equipped with a drink because they just make me feel more relaxed, you know. Today's drink is a tropical smoothie with spinach and an iron sachet because I'm anemic, and what else does it have in it? And a banana, and it is delicious. Oh my God, that's so good. It also has almond milk in it. It's better with vanilla milk, but we don't have any. So, bit of background. Also, I'm not very well, so every now and then my eyes will go a bit weird and I might sneeze. Please ignore me, it's not COVID. I've taken so many tests, more than I can count, and they're all negative. So it's not COVID, I just have a good old-fashioned cold. So, bit of background story about my journey and kind of how I got to the place of quitting my 9-to-5 job. So I have always wanted to have my own business and to work for myself, like literally for as long as I can remember. I've started my own businesses since I left uni, so seven years ago when I left university. Oh my God. But literally since the day I left, I've started my own businesses. Now, I have had multiple businesses which did not work out. Actually, the whole reason I started this channel was mostly to talk about what I'd learned from failing in the past. And it's only been in the recent years where I've actually managed to create a business which has worked for myself. And that is mostly down to all the failures I've had and all the mistakes I've had to learn from them. In terms of the businesses that I've had which have failed, I had a candle company which I really want to bring back one day because I really loved it. I had a candle company which I worked on for years. I even got a business loan out for it, which I never talk about very often because it's still... I see it as an investment, even though I lost all the money because it didn't do well. I see it as an investment because I did learn a lot. So there's that. I got a business loan out for that one, didn't work out. I also had like a theme page at one point where I had like over 10,000 followers on it. And then I just didn't really know how to like utilize it properly because it was such early days of Instagram. So it just didn't really take off the way that it should have. And then I basically gave up on it, which was silly. I had a print company once where I'd make these really cute prints which basically displayed your locations. It was mainly for like different boroughs of London, which I actually really like and might bring back one day. What else have I had? I had a clothing company that was like fresh out of uni, which just didn't work. I remember I got a bonus from one of my first jobs and I spent it on some stock, and then I ended up donating all the stock because it just didn't really work out. What else have I failed at? Point is, I've had loads of businesses which didn't work. After all of those failures, I then took everything I'd learned and I created 2 boutiques, which did work. I did close those down recently. I talk about why in that video I linked to before, but basically they weren't kind of bringing me joy anymore. And I had this business which was doing really well and which I wanted to focus on, which brings me on to the most recent business and the most successful business I've had so far, which is this company, which is a coaching and consultancy company, which is made up of this YouTube channel, various digital products, coaching and consultancy services. So that's a bit of background into what I've been spending the past 7 years doing. But what's most interesting, I guess, about that is during that time, I've always worked. I've only recently quit my job, and by recently, I mean this is week 2 of me not having a job. So I've had a job since even before I graduated. Like I had my postgraduate job lined up from like the week after I handed in my dissertation. Like I hadn't even had my graduation ceremony yet, and I was in London working at an agency. So I've worked the whole time. And the reason why, and I feel like maybe a lot of people can relate to this, is I'm not in the financial position where I could have just quit my job or not worked and given 100% to any of my businesses. And if I'm honest, I'm really happy about that because as you could have heard from my story, a lot of them didn't work. And I don't know if I would have arrived at the same place that I've arrived at now if I didn't go about things the way I did. Like having a secure income, allowed me to take risks and pivot and invest money as and when I could. Bear in mind, again, it wasn't like I was earning a lot of money, but because I had a full-time job, I was able to invest in these businesses. But then also myself and my partner moved out and we got a mortgage, and I could still go on holiday from time to time. So it wasn't like my whole life was put on hold to try and make these various businesses work. It was almost more of a gradual thing, which may not be for everyone, but I do not regret it at all. I think it really worked for me. Now, my tip for any side hustlers out there who, or not even like side hustlers now, but like people who are about to create a side hustle or who are considering it, because so many people are as a result of the ridiculous couple of years that we've just had, right? My advice to you on this is to do it, first of all. Like, big fan of the side hustle. It's literally called We Side Hustle, which I'm going to rebrand, by the way, for various reasons. One, that I'm just not a side hustle anymore, but also hustle has such negative connotations. So anyway, the point being, I'm clearly a fan of having your own side project going on the side, right? My tip to you is to find a full-time job which either contributes to what you're trying to create on the side or which doesn't consume all of your mental energy. So the reason why these are the two options which I personally think are the best route for anyone who wants to have a side hustle is because I had a job which took a lot of my mental capacity. Like, it was not an easy job. It required a lot of thought, a lot of really hard graft and work. I mean, I loved my job, but it wasn't an easy job for me to do, right? Now, the reason why I feel like I was still able to do that job and have my side hustles, granted that at times, especially towards the end, it got quite difficult, is because my job was all about marketing. And I worked at a specialist marketing agency in London. It was all about specifically sponsorship and partnership marketing. Oh, a sneeze. Sorry, when my sinuses go a bit wild, I've just realized that the ring light like bothers them a bit, so my eyes might go a bit weird. Anyway, I don't actually feel that bad. I don't want anyone to think I'm like working whilst I'm really, really ill. I don't actually feel that bad. It's just every now and then my sinuses go a bit wild. So my job was obviously in marketing and advertising, and the company that I've created now is all about kind of marketing and entrepreneurship, right? So much of what I was doing in my day job was kind of helping my side hustle, in the sense that I was keeping all of this marketing terminology and these tactics all fresh in my mind. Like, the two things were related. So even though it required a lot of my mental capacity, I do credit my job and the other jobs I've had for keeping me sharp. I studied marketing and design and communications 7 years ago. I've already established it was a while ago. Now, that's great, and of course that degree was useful, but the reason why that degree was so useful was because I stayed in that industry, and therefore all of that marketing terminology and that theory stayed with me and has stayed with me through the years because I've continuously used it, and that's what I've carried into this business. And that is honestly why I feel like this business is doing so well, because of all my experience and all of my knowledge in marketing, right? The other alternative option, if you don't think the former one is a good option for you, is to instead get a job which doesn't require any mental capacity at all. So get a job where you're working in retail. Like, oh my God, I used to work in Topshop when I was younger, and honestly, I just used to sit and like map out my finances a lot. Don't know why. And I also used to just shop. Sorry to anyone out there who used to be my manager, but I just used to spend the whole time just like going around the shop floor and picking up the things that I wanted and then hiding them behind the till, and then on lunch break I'd buy them. And that was like my day every day. Anyway, I was like 17 at the time. What do you expect? But it's a good example of how like that job was not using my mental capacity. Like, I was not having to think hard. It was like a fairly easy job for me to do. Find a job what's like that for you, because what that means is that you can either spend a lot of your time thinking about your business, or when the time comes that you're ready to start working on your side hustle, you're actually really clear, your head is feeling really clear, and you're not already mentally exhausted from your really difficult job. Okay, so now I want to talk about how I knew that it was the right time for me to quit my job, and hopefully my method that I went through is going to help anyone out there who's thinking the same thing. Now, the main thing what made me even start thinking about my job and whether I was going to quit, whether I was going to go part-time, was because I didn't have any time. I reached burnout, which I've spoken about in the past, and it was like a really dark place for me. I took 2 weeks off work, and I really evaluated my whole life. Like, I basically audited my life, and I figured out what I was spending time on which I really enjoyed and brought me joy, what I was spending time on that I needed financially, but also what was taking up most amount of my time which I didn't necessarily need anymore, and that was my job. I'll talk about how I came up with the conclusion that financially I didn't need my job anymore in a second. But that's essentially what kind of gave me the kick to start thinking about my job and whether or not I should change kind of my relationship with it. But in all honesty, I needed someone else's opinion. Like, even when that time in my life came when I was like, I need to do something about my job, I was still thinking I'm going to go part-time, because the idea of quitting to me just seemed so radical. Like, it seemed so out of touch and out of reach. It seemed ridiculous. It seemed irresponsible. So I wouldn't even let myself consider it, if I'm being completely honest. So what I did is I called up my old boss, and I've always been so fortunate with my bosses. Oh my God, I've had the best bosses. But I called up my old boss, and she's incredible. She's actually one of my clients now in my new business. But yeah, she's incredible. And I had this long conversation with her, and I basically said the situation I was in. I mapped out everything about my business. Like, I did not hold anything back. I said how much money I was earning from it, how much time it was taking. And then when I finished talking, she was like, you need to leave. Like, you need to quit. Like, it's time. You don't have time anymore. Do the math, but it sounds like you're ready to quit. And honestly, if it wasn't for someone else being like, leave, quit, I don't know if I ever even would have landed at that conclusion. Like, I needed someone external to kind of say that to me. So my tip to you, if you're in a similar predicament and you're just not quite sure, or maybe if you're like, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh no, I could never quit, it's not the right time, maybe just get someone else's opinion, because maybe it is. Like, that's honestly what I honestly thought it wasn't the right time, and it was. So anyway, once I had that conversation with her, I was like, okay, cool. I need to do some math. I need to do some checks and figure out, is this even feasible to me? Like, is this a realistic option? Smoothie break. Anyone who doesn't usually make smoothies, like, another tip for you. Oh my God, I'm pathetic. All I do is give out tips. Use frozen fruit mix as well as fresh fruit, because it makes it so cold and it's so refreshing. It's so nice. Okay, so the first thing I checked was basically my debt. Let's just call it my financial health. I was like, okay, cool. If we're gonna do this, if I'm gonna quit my job, I really need to make sure that some of my just like stupid debt needs to not exist anymore. So for all transparency, the debt what I was like reviewing and wanting to check were things like credit card debt and like short-term loan debt and stuff like that. So I mentioned before that I took out a business loan, which was kind of like a short-term loan for one of my old businesses. Now, I had already paid that off. I paid it off last year. So that was like a big tick, like that's gone, I'm not paying that off anymore, great. I did, however, have credit card debt, which I done some calculations and I was like, okay, when can I pay this off? And after looking at my financials for my business and realizing what money I had coming in, as in like confirmed money, like contracted money, where I was like, this is coming in on this day, I know that for sure. I realized that I'd be able to clear all my credit card debt within like a week. Like, it was basically already gone once that money came in. So once I looked at that and figured out, okay, cool, that kind of bad debt, you know, your consumer debt, that type of debt is gone, I was like, great. Of course I have other debt. I have a mortgage, as I think I mentioned earlier, and I have student loans. Now, this is going to be completely up to you in terms of how you approach this, but in my opinion, in no way was I going to clear my mortgage before I was going to quit my job. It's just never gonna happen. So the mortgage to me wasn't something that I was considering as bad debt. I was like, mortgage is fine. Put that towards my kind of next section when I calculate all my expenses and my emergency fund and stuff like that, okay? Now, my student loans, I also approached in a similar way. And I think it's gonna depend on where you're from, because obviously I'm British. Don't know if you've noticed. I'm British, and our student loans are really different to student loans in other countries, specifically student loans in the USA, like I'm well aware. For example, our student loans, if we don't pay them off by a certain age, I think it is, they just get wiped. Like, they're not something which, I mean, they're annoying because they're still loans, but like, they don't really bother you that much. Like, you only pay an amount what's relative to how much you're earning, and if you never pay them off, then like, it's fine, they just get wiped and like, whatever, they've gone. Like, it's just not really that big of a deal. For me anyway, that's how I approach it. So it makes me feel a lot better about it. So to me, student loans weren't a problem. They're going to be there. Eventually they'll go away, whatever. So that wasn't something that I was going to tell myself I needed to pay off in order to quit my job. Sorry, my eyes are watering again. Sinuses. Dear God. Okay. So once I'd done my debt check, I was like, great, my debt's in good health. I'm not going to have like these monthly payments going off to anything outside of like, you know, my car or like my phone. So whatever, we're all good. We're good to go. The next thing that I calculated, and the next thing which you are going to want to calculate, is your emergency fund. Now, your emergency fund is basically a pot of money that you will set aside for basically when things start to go, you know, wah, wah, and your business might not be doing well and you need some money to keep you going, right? Your emergency fund is supposed to keep you afloat. So in order for me to figure out my emergency fund, personally, this is what I did. I first figured out what my expenses were per month. Now, people do this in different ways. Some people figure out the absolute bare minimum expenses per month. So basically their bills and what it would cost them to feed themselves the bare minimum per month. And that's how they work out what their expenses are. I'm a little bit more extra than that. I don't really at any point want to be living where like I can only eat pasta every day. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to figure out what my expenses per month, like my realistic expenses per month. So my food, but also being able to go out like once or twice and maybe get a takeaway. Nothing lavish, but I wanted my monthly expense pot to reflect my actual way of life, right? So I worked out how much that was per month. So let's say for me that was £2,000. Let's just say for the sake of this video, for me that was £2,000, right? So I've already worked out I need £2,000 per month to pay for my bills and to pay for me to live, right? I then worked out how long it would take me to get a job, right? Because in this scenario, things are going down the toilet and you potentially need to go back into 9-to-5 life. Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen, but this is what the whole purpose of the emergency fund is. Now, you have to take into account some specific things here. You have to take into account your industry, your qualifications, really be honest with yourself. How long is it going to take you to get back into your industry? For example, I worked in an advertising agency, right? Advertising agencies, the jobs are not few or far between. They are popping up all over the place. I have quite a lot of experience. I worked in the industry for a while, and therefore for me, I felt like I actually could probably get a new job within that industry within about 3 months. Now, if you work in a really specialist industry where there's only one vacancy what's relevant to you per month, obviously that's going to be different. Like you may need to be saving up for 6 months, 8 months, maybe even a year to make sure that you have enough time to get your job back, right? So also think about things like your connections. Like what connections have you built over the years where you think, actually, I could probably go and work there. Like if they had a vacancy, that person would hire me. Think about that and then come up with the amount of time it would take you to get a new job and then add a month just for safety. So for me, it was 4 months. So let's say that my emergency fund was £2,000 and I need 4 months to find a new job. I'd multiply those, which would give me £8,000, and that is how much my emergency fund needs to be. Please note that that £8,000 needs to be after any taxes that you need to pay. So that needs to be £8,000 that you have spare to spend to keep you afloat if things start to go down the drain. Now that is best case scenario. You don't have to be as like, if it's like as generous as that, but like, I don't know about you, but I want to feel safe. I don't want to ever, what happens when you have a small emergency fund is that you start making business decisions out of like a scarcity mindset or out of fear, and a lot of the time those aren't going to be the right business decisions. So I need to know that I've got a big cushion behind me so that when it comes to a point where maybe I'm investing loads in my company 1 month and I'm not making a lot, I don't fret because I know that I've got money to keep me going. Right? The next thing you need to check is your actual earnings. So how much money are you earning from this business that you're about to leave your full-time job for to focus on full-time? Few things to take into account here. One, you want to be earning money from multiple income streams if possible. For example, for me, I earn money from YouTube AdSense. So those are the ads that play within this video. I earn money from sponsorship deals. I earn money from my coaching and consultancy services. And I earn money from my digital products. So those are 4 income streams that I currently have under this business. I'm also working on building my affiliate marketing income stream, which will mean that hopefully within the year I should have 5 streams, which basically just give you a bit of cushion. If one stream doesn't do well 1 month, there's no fret because you've got other streams which are going to kind of keep you afloat. You also want to calculate how much money you've actually been making from your business each month so far. I'm hoping you're doing this already, but work out how much money you're earning from your job so far. My personal rule was that I wanted to have 3 months of consecutive earnings when I was earning 25% more than my previous job's paycheck, okay? And by that, I mean post-tax. So not how much money my company was taking in, but how much money I was paying myself from my company 3 months in a row needed to be more than 25% of what I was earning from my full-time job. And the reason why I needed it to be more was because there were things like fluctuations which come into account, which I wanted to feel safe. Like I wanted to feel safe, like if I have a month what dips, even if it dips by 20%, I'm still gonna earn the same amount that I was earning before, right? So once I had 3 of those months consecutively in a row, I was like, okay, cool, I'm probably earning enough to actually sustain myself now. Other things taken into account are things like other external factors which may be influencing that income. So for example, I may not count a month where I've had this ridiculously viral video and I've suddenly earned £1,000 more on my AdSense than usual. Like that's not something that I can replicate every month. So that month I'm potentially not going to count when I'm looking at how much money I've earned from my business each month. Do you know what I mean? If something's happened which has made your income absolutely spike, but you know you can't maintain that, then just take that with a pinch of salt. If you suddenly earn 10 grand 1 month, but you know that next month you're going to earn 1 grand, it might not be the right time for you to quit. Okay, the final part, and potentially the most important part, is basically a life check. So we've checked for debt, we've checked your emergency fund, we've checked your income, and now we need to check your life and your lifestyle. So one of the first things I want to ask you is, do you actually want to do this? Like, do you enjoy doing this side hustle? Is this something you're gonna really love? Because the grass isn't always greener. And sometimes we can convince ourselves that we absolutely hate the thing that we're doing, and this other thing looks so much shinier and prettier, and it's gonna be amazing, and life's gonna be great, and you know, we're just gonna be able to do what we want all the time. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm absolutely loving like this whole entrepreneurship, working for myself, like literally so happy. But I'm also well aware that the grass isn't always greener, and I had to really sit down and think to myself, like, is this something that I really want to do? Am I really passionate about it? Fortunately for me, the answer was a huge resounding yes. But for you, the answer might not be yes. I just want you to be really honest with yourself. Grass isn't always greener, so just really ask yourself that question. The next question I want to ask yourself when you're doing this kind of lifestyle check is, are you prepared to fail? Because if you're creating your own company and your own business, the chances are you are going to fail multiple times. Hopefully you can fail, recover from it, find a new solution, and then grow and continue, because really that's where the real success is, right? It's not in never failing, it's just in how you react to your failures. But you've got to be ready to fail, and you've got to be ready to have some tough times, and for things not always to be plain sailing. And if you're not, then maybe kind of the full-time entrepreneurship life might not be something that you would enjoy. Next thing, do you have a backup plan? Now, not everyone's fortunate enough to have a backup plan like this. As I mentioned, I have moved out. I lived with my boyfriend. We have done for like 5 odd years. We have a mortgage. So there is a lot of expenses that I have that I cannot skip out on, and like which are kind of at risk, which I guess is why I had to do all that other math and make sure I had a really healthy emergency fund, right? But I am very fortunate in that my mum and my dad both live in London, and my mum especially literally lives 10 minutes away in a car, and she has a house and she has spare rooms. Like, I could move there if things got really bad. Jamie, my boyfriend or fiance, I never like using the word fiance, it feels really pretentious, but anyway, like, we could move there and we'd be fine, and we could still work in London and have a life. Wouldn't change that much. Your situation might not be the same. Like, what is your backup plan here? What is going to happen if things really go south? I know we've got the emergency fund, but there's still other things that you just want to make sure you've thought about, like your living situation. So that's basically it. That's kind of my story, the steps that I went through, and the steps that I recommend anyone out there who is thinking about one day leaving their job to pursue a business idea or their side hustle. These are the steps that I recommend you take. I really hope that was useful to you. If you have any other content suggestions for a story time or like behind the scenes, I'm gonna start vlogging one day. I swear, I'm just so bad at it. But practice makes perfect. Please share them, because I'm really open to suggestions. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I recommend checking out this one. It is basically a Q&A where you can get to know me in a little bit more detail. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.